What's up, guys? Welcome into the Week 6 NFL edition of Bogey Free. I am your host, Matt Jones. You can find me on Twitter at MattJonesTFR. And I am joined by our first three-peat guest, DFS Jimmy. What's going on, man? How we doing tonight?
What's up, man? I'm doing good, man. Just drinking a little beer, watching a little Thursday night football, listening to Tony Romo get all fired up as the color guy, and just ready to talk some football and see what we can break down for the games this week.
Yeah, man, you're lapping the field right now in guest appearances on Bogey Free, so I guess that counts for something somewhere.
I feel like the third time's a charm, and maybe it's my week to take down an NFL GPP. I think.
There you go. That's
I'm feeling good about it. There's lots of options, lots of places to go this week. So,
how was your week 5? How did it treat you last week?
Not too bad. I didn't have the greatest cash week, but it wasn't bad. I think I had like 45% cash. So I didn't take a bath. And I min cashed a couple of GPPs, no real sweats or anything like that. I did, however, go 7 for 7 against the spread in the Super 7 contest. So
there you go.
That was the highlight of my week 5. I was pretty fired up about that. So
that's
I'm
awesome.
clawing my way back into the Super 7.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a good way to get back into it and pay a little bit more attention, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, I ended up my cash lineup ended up like over 170 and just mashed. I think I lost 2 head-to-heads out of all the games that I put out. And I had like a small, like a reasonably small sweat for the play action at one point. Ooh. Like it was 4:30, 4:45, 5 o'clock, and I'm like 3rd, 4th place. Ooh. And I'm like, I'm spending the money in my head already. And just it kind of, that all that scoring in the Green Bay Dallas game sort of did me in. I faded that in this particular lineup, and it it didn't completely pay off for me. I ended up in like I think 70th ish in the play action, which still for a $3 tournament getting 250 back isn't the worst thing in the world. So
no, and that puts you in the top 1.5%, 3.5%, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I was perfectly happy with that. It was a good week. And we sort of talked about it a little bit last week on the show, just sort of balancing out your cash and GPP, just like game selection and that kind of stuff, just making sure, you're giving yourself a shot if you end up with a decent GPP lineup that you're going to come out way ahead because your cash lineup smashes. And that's kind of what happened for me last week. So I was pretty pleased with that result. I think that lineup ended up like 192, 193. Or actually, no, that one actually went over 200. I had another one that was like 190. So decent day. But we also, real quick, before we get into week 6, I do want to congratulate, what is it, Shay6208. Was the winner in the listener league. Won with a lineup that ended up scoring 167. They had the Jacoby to TY stack. They had RIP Odell in that lineup. Little Jordy, ASJ, and they actually went Bryce Butler, which I thought was interesting.
Really?
Yeah. He or she, I don't know, was the only person in our listener league to play Bryce. I mean, 2 catches for 57 yards at that price, I guess, isn't the worst outcome. I thought it was an interesting play, to say the least. They also went with Fournette and Duke Johnson, so that late touchdown by Duke sort of cemented it for them. My dad came in 4th, so. Nice. He was sweating. He was, I think, points out of first place. So he was so pissed. I was watching the games with him, and he was so tilted. I felt so bad because he was in first for a little bit there, and then that Jordy touchdown sort of knocked him out of it. But my dad is always grinding DFS, so
that's awesome. That's awesome. I wish I could get my dad to play some DFS. He doesn't give a flip about sports.
Yeah. So we're that was a good result. We had Roger Casey took down the first couple weeks. I took down one of the weeks, so we're off to a good start in the listener league. I'm going to post that tonight, and I think we're going to open it up a little bit more. I think we've been doing like 30 or 35 guys, so make sure you get into that if you're listening to this right now. And with that, why don't we head over to quarterbacks for this week? Jimmy, what are you thinking for some cash plays at quarterback this week?
I see everybody on the Jets quarterback, McCown. Obviously the matchup with the Patriots is juicy, allowing all kinds of passing yards and goodness. But I have a feeling that that's going to be bad chalk this week, and I could be totally wrong and end up losing money. But if I'm paying down for quarterback this week, I personally like Hogan. I think the loss of J.J. Watt is going to change how that defense approaches this week, and they're going to be playing from behind. And I think Hogan showed some real aggressiveness last week and quite a bit of rapport with his receiver, Ricardo Louis. I know that's Pat Mayo's guy. So I think for me, Kevin Hogan's the way I'm going in cash. And you don't have to go that low this week, I don't think, but that's the way I'm going. It opens up basically everything you want to do in almost every position. And then you take a couple other free squares, and I think you can put a really solid cash floor or cash lineup floor together, point floor for your QB with Kevin Hogan this week, because he has the mobility, and that's kind of what does it for me over McCown. McCown doesn't have that option, and I think you probably can lock in, probably 3 points, 30 rushing yards, or maybe 20 rushing yards, 20 to 30 rushing yards for Hogan that kind of boosts his floor a little bit. And that's where I'm going to be going. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes a ton of sense. I think definitely if you're going to pay down, you're looking at either of those two guys. And I think, Hogan has played well every chance that he's gotten. It's been small samples, but every time he's been in there, he seems like he has, decent sort of like a control over the team, and he knows what's going on. So it's always a plus when you see a guy who has some confidence back there.
For sure.
I mean, we'll get into it a little bit later. I think you could stack him up with Njoku and just like mash, because every time he's been on the field, Njoku has done well so far.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm considering to throw out there in some stacks when we talk about that later. If you are going to pay up a little bit, I think Deshaun Watson makes a decent amount of sense. He's currently just way ahead of everybody else in fan share tags at the moment. He's up around like 26 start tags, and nobody else even has 20 at this point. So I think there's definitely enough value at the other positions where you can pay up a little bit this week. Typically, like last week, I went with Hoyer. I usually pay down in my cash lineups for quarterback, but there's definitely sort of a little bit of flexibility this week, which I think will make cash games pretty interesting, because there's not really like a clear, this is the quarterback, this is one of your running backs, this is one of your wide receivers, and it sort of falls from there. I think you can go lots of different ways. So I think if you land on the right cash lineup this week, it's going to be extremely profitable for you.
Yeah, and just one of those notes, this is one of those weeks where you need to make sure you toss your cash lineup into a GPP because there isn't a clear-cut cash, kind of construction. So like you said, if your cash lineup hits, I think it's going to hit big. That said, what are you, I guess my concern with, and I see everybody on Deshaun Watson, and I mean, it makes sense. The guy's looked really good, and certainly he has the rapport with Hopkins. He's feeding him, and they're not afraid to let him air it out, but he's not going to be chasing in this game like he has been in his other two games. I mean, they're not going to be playing from behind, I don't suspect. And my concern is Cleveland, kind of, I just don't see the same scenarios that I saw the last couple of weeks where he's going to have to throw it and he's going to have to make those connections. I really think that Deshaun Watson could disappoint this week, not from, a actual football perspective, from a fantasy perspective, because I just don't think he's going to have the opportunities to air it out. I also think that we saw last week they're starting to get Lamar Miller involved again a little bit. And, as a heavy home favorite against the Cleveland Browns, I think that paying up for Deshaun Watson this week may not be the plus EV move. I could be totally wrong about that, but he is still a rookie quarterback, and they are heavy home favorites, and that always favors a running back. So I'm a little worried about game script for Watson myself.
Yeah, and I think that that's fair. Definitely from like a ceiling perspective. I think that you're probably just in my opinion, when I'm building my cash lineup, I'm usually trying to insulate myself from ownership in as many places as I can, and trying to hit one or two guys that I really have a strong feeling about. So, if Watson, if this continues with the tags and I'm, projecting his ownership out and he's going to be like out of control in this range, I mean, as much as we want to say, McCown might be a cash play, Hogan might be a cash play, he's still doubling their start tag. So I think he's going to see a fair bit of ownership. So I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a reasonable chance that he gets all these yards and gets none of the touchdown equity, and Lamar Miller scores 2 or 3 touchdowns. Honestly, like, Lamar Miller is one of my favorite GPP plays this week.
Yeah.
So I understand that for sure. And, it's this being Thursday night, I'll definitely still be weighing these options, but I just think it's so tough to avoid like anybody on Houston right now, just because they're playing the Browns at home.
Exactly. No, I absolutely, yeah. I think Watson's got a decent floor, but I do worry about his ceiling and, and just the game script for him. I think if Watson gets to be just as chalky as we think he is going to be, there are two really interesting pivots that are kind of in between the McCowans and the, the bottom of the barrel, and, the Hogans versus, going up to Watson. You've got Winston and Palmer, the number one against, or number one, in allowing fantasy points to quarterbacks, and number 5 in allowing fantasy points to quarterbacks facing each other. So I think we have a lot of shootout potential here. Tampa Bay's defense did get a little bit healthier over the last week, and they're getting some of that linebacking core back, but they still don't have the run stuffer. Adrian Peterson's not going to make a huge impact on an offense, and Arizona's still going to air it out. And we know that even with Doug Martin back, Jameis is going to air it out too. So I think either one of those guys make a decent cash play as well. They both should have some safe floors, and Jameis gets you a little bit of rushing upside. Palmer couldn't run away from a skeleton at this point.
He can't run away from his shadow.
Yeah. So, but either one of those guys, I think, makes some decent pivots to the mid range. If you don't want to go up to Watson and you don't want to be all the way down at Hogan or McCown, I think that's where folks are going to land right there.
Absolutely. And then as we sort of transition to, thinking about, some tournament plays, in my mind, this is another week where you can really pay all the way up and be contrarian. I think, I know, okay, Xavier Rhodes, we get it. He's great. But Aaron Rodgers is still going to score points. He could still easily throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and completely avoid Xavier Rhodes the whole entire game. That's within his range of outcomes. So I think that he's not being tucked up enough. I think Tom Brady going against the Jets.
Yeah.
It's why not? There's all this value at running back, right? Why aren't we just paying up for Tom Brady? I don't understand.
It's because people don't know who to stack him with, I think, is the reason that Tom Brady kind of goes overlooked, because he distributes. It's the same reason Breeze goes overlooked a lot, is because they both distribute the ball so efficiently, which is, kind of a mark of an exceptional quarterback, right? So while they're as good as they are, I think the question becomes, who do I stack them with to get that really great correlation? And nobody really has the answer, especially now that Brady has all his weapons healthy. It's a little easier when Amendola's out with a concussion and Gronk's banged up. You kind of know where the targets are going to funnel a little bit, and they're going to bring a pass catching running back in. But you don't really have that. He's got all his weapons, and they're going against the Jets. So
Right.
I suspect that Brady is going to smash this week, and nobody's talking about him. I think he is an elite GPP play this week, and stack him with Gronk, who should be healthy, and I think that'd be awesome. I think it could just be one of those spots.
Yeah. I mean, when I make my 20, when I make my 20 play action lineups this week, I'm going to have 4 Brady lineups, one with each option. And I do the same thing with Rodgers every week because you never know. And if you manage to land on the right guy with either of those quarterbacks, if you can't make a good lineup the rest of the way when they smash, then, it's much money on DraftKings anyway. So, I think those guys make a ton of sense. I like Stafford quite a bit this week in tournaments as well.
Even as he's banged up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there's enough of a reason to think that game shoots out, and it's not like he's necessarily a guy that's like gonna take off and run and get you 40 yards on the ground. I'm just pulling it up now. He's fully practiced the last 2 days. They said it was like a mild high ankle sprain. I don't really understand what that means. I thought a high ankle sprain was just like a bad thing, like no matter what. Yeah. But like I said, I mean, I think if that's going to scare people off him and he's going to be low owned in New Orleans against that defense, not necessarily like a cash play for me or anything, but in a tournament, I'll definitely have some exposure to him as well. Again, I'm talking about, max entering and sort of differentiating. I think Marvin Jones makes a ton of sense this week too, because New Orleans has just they've actually been like pretty close to league average in catch rate by depth up to like 14, 15 yards. And then it just spikes up. Like if you go to airyards.com and you look at it from like 15 to 30 yards, it's just like gross. And that's where Marvin Jones is going to make his money. Yeah. So I think that makes a little bit of sense this week. I think that game will go over. Too. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we do have to, in that sense, we do have to keep an eye on Golladay too. He returned to practice. He's been limited the last couple of days, but if they're both in, I think just putting a lineup with one and a lineup with the other makes a little bit of sense. But are there any other quarterbacks that you think make a little bit of sense this week?
Breeze at home off the bye is it's free money, dude.
Yep.
I hate to use that term, but it's like Brady off the bye. I mean, when you have an elite quarterback and a coach that knows how to scheme in the Coors Field of DFS or of NFL, I don't know. It's hard to find a reason not to play Breeze, and I think really all you have to do is play Breeze with anybody but Alvin Kamara, and you'll be different.
Right. Oh, for sure.
So, but yeah, I think you can lock Breeze in for 303 in this game. I figure they're going to put up points against Detroit. Detroit just lost one of their best defenders. I forget his name at the moment, but yeah, I think that it's a smash spot for Breeze as well, and I'll definitely have some exposure to him at GPPs. I don't think I'm going to try and work him into my cash lineup, but definitely going to have some stacks in GPPs for Breeze.
Absolutely.
What are your and Cousins is my other guy. I think this is one of those, we get like 3 of these games a year from Cousins, and I think it's a 5 touchdown effort type of situation for Breeze or for Cousins this week. I know that a lot of people are talking him up, and you can stack him with anybody, and you can play him naked and whatever you want to do. But I think Cousins is squarely in play this week as well.
Absolutely, and Jordan Reed came off the injury report today, so that's definitely viable. Anytime you get a chance to actually play Jordan Reed when he's healthy is a good thing. So
yeah, I just hope he stays healthy for more than 8 snaps.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, it's definitely in his range of outcomes to just break his foot on the first play of the game. So that's a bit of a concern.
Yeah, and with the other thing that I think helps Cousins a little bit is they're going to be starting Pirine, who is not a great running back at this point in his career. Fat Rob's still out, I think. San Francisco for their terrible record, they've been playing teams close, and with the loss of Josh Norman last week, I think that Hoyer will have the ability to maybe hit Godwin or Goodwin for a deep ball, something like that, and keep them in this game, and keep Cousins throwing, keep him aggressive. So I think the potential, if that game script plays out, I think it certainly helps Cousins' upside.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, I think we'll get into it in a little bit when we hit the stacks, but I think that's definitely a game stack worthy game with throwing Garcon coming back the other way. But
yeah.
All right, so why don't we shoot over to running back? I mean, I guess we can start with the values, right? There's these guys that are being talked about in the 4K range. You got Jerick McKinnon, Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara, or Kamara, whatever the hell he wants to be called. I don't know. Elijah McGuire, even depending on Forte and Powell's status for the week.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to go one, where are you starting with your cash lineup?
Oh, it's McKinnon. I don't even think it's close, to be honest. Part of that is probably a bit of bias because he's the last one we saw, and we saw heavy workload and blah, blah, blah. But Latavius Murray's still not 100% because I think some people are worried about a bit of a timeshare or them working Murray back in. If you watch that game the other night, Murray looked like garbage. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't make aggressive cuts.
So he looked like Latavius Murray.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. He's so bad. Like, I hate that guy so much.
I think his ankle's still banged up. And I mean, he said it himself. He's not 100%.
He said it as much. Exactly.
So I think it's just McKinnon's the free square. He's the pass catching back, and he looked aggressive. He looked better than what we've seen from Jerick McKinnon in the past. Now, that said, Jerick McKinnon, when he's gotten the workload, previous years, has not been great. But I personally think I saw a bit of a different Jerick McKinnon last week, and I hope it's the same Jerick McKinnon that shows up. But I think he's got a really safe floor for cash, and I think he has a ton of upside in what will be a game that Minnesota tries to grind out and slow down the pace as much as possible and give him as much work as they possibly can, whether it's through the air if they're behind, or whether it's between the tackles if they're ahead and they want to grind it out. But either way, I think he is going to get just all the action, and I'll be heavily exposed to him in cash and GPPs. Yeah,
I mean, I've been burned by that guy so many times. Like, it's so tilting that I'm
my God.
I finally, like, this past weekend, there's guys asking me questions on Twitter, and I'm like, I don't know, like, wait a week on McKinnon. And then, of course, I'm getting like it all through my mentions, like, oh, what'd you say about McKinnon? But like, whatever. I get it. I fucked up, whatever. But I mean, when you just look at his measurables, like the combine that he put together, like his spark score. Like, it's wild. Like, Player Profiler literally has Kermit sipping iced tea as his like picture on Player Profiler right now. Like, I just pulled it up to double check. Like, it's nuts. I mean, they have his comp as LaDainian Tomlinson. Like, the fact that this guy hasn't produced to this point is ridiculous. And you know, I mean, he's only 25 though. Like, it's well in his range to just be like, all right, I'm good now. Like, Dalvin Cook is out. I have my opportunity. I screwed it up when Adrian Peterson went out last year. Let me actually like put together a decent season. And I think it's going to be very hard for me to avoid McKinnon in most of my lineups, especially at this price. Like, are you kidding me with this price?
Yeah, I mean, he is the free square. So, I mean, in cash, I don't think you need to get too cute with the whole thing. I mean, my number 2 in cash would be Ingram. The problem is you got Kamara there and, blah, 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 game script if it shoots out and whatnot. But I think Ingram's still heavily involved, and he's probably the best pivot if you want to go up $300. But really, I don't think it's necessary, and I think you're overthinking it. Just plug him in and then build around.
Yeah, exactly. I think that makes a ton of sense. I think you can, I guess we can get into it now. If you're going to pay up, it's very interesting this week, just looking at FanShare again, like from Kareem Hunt to Devontae Freeman, is an $800 difference, and all these guys are within like 5 or 6 tags of each other. So there's no way that all 5 of these guys are going to be crazy highly owned because of the value and because they're all at the same price point. So you have Hunt, Fournette, Gordon, Gurley, and Freeman. I mean, is there a way that you're differentiating these guys? Is there something that's really jumping out to you that you think is worthwhile here, or are they all kind of in the same kind of spot? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think you're right. I don't think any of them are going to be ridiculously high owned comparative to the others. I think if you want to go to the top, you're going to get Bell lower than you're going to get the others, just because, last week was a bit of a bust. Everybody was on and blah, blah, blah. You know the story. So you get the last week bias. But I think the same thing for me, since there's not a huge, I think, advantage or disadvantage to any of them. I think they're all in good spots. I personally like going back to Gurley on the road. It's an afternoon game, which I think benefits the West Coast team heading to the East, for one. But two, I think what we saw last week was the coaching staff getting a little cute with trying to use Tavon fucking Austin. And
6 rushes, like, for what? Like, why are we doing this?
Like, I'm not sure why Tavon Austin's still on an NFL roster, but whatever. I mean, it's obvious that what they were doing the first few weeks and just force feeding Gurley works through the pass game, through the rush, and they're not going to be able to throw, I think. So I guess the question with some of these guys is, are the coaches as smart as we are, right? Does the coaching staff understand the optimal game plan for beating Jacksonville? Obviously, Pittsburgh didn't understand that.
They're so stupid. It was so dumb.
It is shocking to me that was the game plan that they took. Like, knowing Big Ben's weakness for holding the ball, his inability to block. I'm not going to get into it. It pisses me off already. But I think going back to Gurley, we're going to see kind of a correction to what we saw the first 4 weeks of the year, and they're going to force feed him in a run funnel defense at home. I think the Jags are in a prime letdown spot here, and I think that the Rams are going to come in and they're going to have the game script to take care of business. So I also think you get Gurley at a bit of depressed ownership, and you get him at a bit of a discount. I think everyone's going to kind of be on Fournette for that reason. I also think Melvin Gordon's still in a good spot. I don't think there's a huge reason to go away from him. We know what Phillip Rivers is. He's not good anymore. So, I mean, they've got their short 8-out passes, and I think they start to work Gordon into that game plan a little bit more against an Oakland team that is, they're probably not going to need to air it out against, because I don't think that, whether Carr starts or not, I don't think they're going to be, full strength.
Right.
So, but those are the two I like. The other one that I really like is Freeman. We know what Freeman's home splits are. They're in a really plus spot here. They're not going to need to air it out against Miami. Miami is inept. They can't do anything. It's a broken ship down there. So I like Freeman to just go off, and he'll probably get several targets as well. And I think he smashes at home.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm fully on board. I was working on my article coming out tomorrow for going through all these games, and just, I feel like Devontae Freeman's being talked up a little bit. He's sort of right in line with a bunch of these guys, but I never feel like his ownership ever gets out of control for whatever reason. And the dude just produces. Like, every time he's at home, he produces. So I don't really understand why people kind of shy away from him sometimes. I do also like Kareem Hunt quite a bit. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. It's hard. Like I said, for cash purposes, I'm probably paying down a little bit. I typically only roll one cash lineup out each week on each slate. So I honestly can't tell you which way I'm leaning right now, because I can't figure it out. Like, gun to my head, I would probably say that I'm going to go Gurley, but every once in a while, this little voice in the back of my head makes me go towards Melvin Gordon. Like, it just seems to keep happening every week. So I guess we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. And I think Bell's in a decent spot. I mean, I know that Kansas City's defense is obviously, you can make an argument that they're the best team in the league right now. But still, like Ben was so bad last week that it's kind of hard to think that they're not going to just try and, run the ball, control the clock, and hopefully keep it away from the juggernaut of Alex Smith.
So I mean, let's dig into that a little bit. I've been going back and forth with the same thing, and I kind of can't figure out if this is a get right spot for the Steelers, and it's okay. Hey guys, we need to wake up and be the killer bees again after Ben kind of self-imposed that he might be done in the post game last week. Yeah. I'm not sure how, but I mean, the way to attack Kansas City is through the air, and I wonder if they go back to the Brown. If they go back to Brown and they just kind of feed him, 15 targets again, and they only give Bell, 15, 18 touches instead. I haven't quite decided. Are you thinking that they just force feed Bell since they screwed up so badly the week before?
Yeah, I think this might be like an overcorrection spot. Just in my head, I think they're going to go back the other way. His splits away from Pittsburgh have sort of lent themselves to that. He scores at a higher rate, touchdown wise, on the road, and I don't know. I would like it if he was like 9K instead of 96, but you win some, you lose some. I think just the floor that he has is puts him at a pretty in a pretty good spot no matter where he is. I really do think it's going to be mostly GPP shares for me. I don't envision myself, maybe like on a late, like an afternoon slate, I might throw him in my cash lineup, but I don't think that he's going to be in my main slate cash lineup this week. Outside of that, I think Lamar Miller, we talked about a little bit before, makes a ton of sense. I am curious for your thoughts on Duke Johnson. Like, the dude has scored 3 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks on like 30 opportunities. Like, I don't see that continuing to happen. But at the same time, maybe they're just like, you know what? He's been doing great. We get him more volume and it evens itself out. Like, what are your thoughts on Duke this week?
I love Duke in general. I have him in my season-long league, and I fought to get him in a bunch of leagues because I think Isaiah Crowell is a fraud. I don't think he's a great running back. They don't have a great run blocking unit there in Cleveland, and they don't play like optimal football, in my opinion. So they're always playing from behind. I think the game script is almost always going to favor Duke Johnson, and that's one of the reasons that I like him is the Browns are bad and they continue to be bad, and all the points are going to be garbage time. Doesn't really matter who the QB is, in my opinion. So he's still going to get his target floor. I think his rushing is actual like true rushes are only going to increase as Crowell continues to demonstrate his inability to play professional football. And if Crowell gets hurt, it's even higher. This week, my only concern is, and I forget who tweeted it out, and I've heard several people talk about it, but I saw someone tweet it out what the splits are with Hogan and without Hogan for Crowell versus Ricardo Louis, and they're pretty staggering, like to the tune of like 5 targets differential. So that makes me a bit concerned. But again, I think game script favors them, and I mean, I could almost see a situation where you stack up Hogan and Johnson and Louis and Njoku and just hope for like a Brown smash spot where they might show up and win a game again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a GPP. But as far as cash, I don't think I can do Duke Johnson this week.
Yeah.
But I do believe that his production, generally speaking, is sustainable. I kind of go back to 2 years ago when Allen Robinson was, quote, so good. It was all garbage time production. And, I think that's just kind of what we're going to see from Duke Johnson this week and probably the rest of the weeks, as long as he's healthy. He's a really talented pass catching back. And I think that they've found a good way to utilize him, kind of similar to Andre Ellington. Generally speaking, I like him this week. I'm probably not going to roll him in anything but GPPs though.
Yeah, for sure. It hurts my heart because I was such a Crowell truther. Like,
I'm sorry.
Like
I just hurts, shit on your whole world.
No. I'm fully off of that train. Like, I was so convinced that he was gonna like be in a good spot this year, and he just hasn't done anything. And I'm like perfectly willing to say like, nope, then I was completely wrong in that regard, like just completely off. But it happens. I mean, the dude on what did they win? 1 game last year, and he was like the RB14. So I was like, you know what? Maybe they improve a little bit. Maybe they get in some better game script. Whatever. He sucks. I hate it. It's the worst thing that's ever happened because all my friends just completely shit on me all the time about it because I was like, no, Corral's gonna smash. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But and the only other guy I really wanted to talk about at running back, honestly, was Ty Montgomery returned to a full practice today. So I mean, Aaron Jones like just smashed last week, and really, I mean, they're 1,100 apart. I mean, are you thinking that either of these Green Bay running backs are worth it? Are you just going pass catchers? What are your thoughts there?
I don't think they're worth it because I think they're both going to be involved, and I don't think that you can reasonably project a decent floor for either one of them. That said, if I'm going to play one of them, I'm going to play Jones. I think it's all too easy to see a situation where Montgomery starts this game and he doesn't finish 3 series. I mean, I don't know if you've never had a broken rib, it's really hard to understand how fragile and how painful that is and what guys are going to be playing through. And I mean, one hit to that area, even with a flak jacket, and he could just be out for the rest of the game because it hurts like hell. I mean, everything you do. So if I'm playing either one of them, I'm playing Jones. And the other reason I'm playing Jones is he was wildly more effective than Montgomery has been all year. Montgomery was doing his business through volume, and Aaron Jones didn't quite need the same thing to reproduce results that were better on average. So, that's my argument for playing Jones. I'm personally staying away from the situation in general this week, and I kind of want to see how that pans out.
Yeah, I'm fully on board.
They still have the healthy third stringer too, who was the second string. I can't remember his name, Jamal Williams, right?
Yeah, Jamal Williams. Yeah,
they still have him in the mix too, and he got 3 or 4 plays before he hurt his knee, so nobody really knows how good or bad he is or was or can be, right? Except the coaching staff. So I mean, it's Mike McCarthy. I mean, it's possible that he gets a split of snaps too, depending on game script.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I can transition into wide receiver here by.
Oh wait, there's one guy. There's one guy we need to talk about.
What do you got?
Chris Thompson. I already said earlier that Samjay Perine is not good at football. I still don't think he's good at football. So I think that this is sort of a really good spot. I don't know how chalky he's going to be, but with everybody kind of talking up Cousins this week. I think guys are going to be looking to stack him with Pryor or maybe Crowder, but I don't think a lot of guys are going to do the quarterback running back stack. And Chris Thompson's the kind of running back that can win you a GPP.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's definitely one of the few running backs that you can stack with a quarterback and expect like reasonable EV back. It's like a lot of times it's not the best move, but like him, James White, like those types of guys, I think you can do that with. Absolutely. So, Cam just ran one in too.
Oh, nice. That's good for my single garbage. What is that pick'em game that's like stars and scrubs? I threw one lineup into there tonight. I threw Cam in it, so that's got to help.
All right, so why don't we shoot over to wide receiver? We can. I'm trying to make sense of everything with the Green Bay wide receiver situation. So we're looking at Jordy, Cobb, and Adams. Are you able to sort of figure out what the hell's going on here? Because it seems like we're playing whack-a-mole every week, to me at least.
Well, Jordy got a little banged up the other day, and that was I have Jordy in my season-long league, and I'm screaming at the television, like, what are you doing? Jordy's not in on the last drive. Turns out he was, a little banged up, but it seems like he's 100%. He hasn't missed a practice all week. Cobb historically has bad splits against Minnesota. I don't really know why that is, but just looking at some numbers, the splits against Minnesota didn't look great. I mean, Rodgers in general splits against Minnesota are not good, and I think the line represents that this week. I think that they believe it's going to be a closer game than, I think Rodgers' efforts over the last 3 weeks would indicate that it will be. But it's between Adams and Nelson for me, and I just don't really know which one to go with. And if you're going to have Rhodes on Nelson, I think that you go Adams and you sleep well at night and be comfortable with it. If they scheme Nelson away and they put him in the slot and they give they just let Devontae Adams run into Xavier Rhodes like they've been known to do. Like, for example, against Richard Sherman in Seattle, the game plan for the Packers has always been stick your third wide receiver over against Sherman and let him just run into that wall, and we'll just feed Jordy from the slot.
Right.
So if that's the game plan and that's what develops over the course of the next 2-3 days, then I'll slide Jordy in and feel really good about it, and it'll be a low owned stack in your GPPs. If it looks like they're just going to let it go, or that Jordy maybe is a bit more limited, then I'll put Adams in there. I think I'm avoiding Cobb just because of his historical splits this week. Yeah,
I think that's fair. And then outside of that, I mean, for cash purposes, we're looking it's a freaking weird week, man. It's like, so we have the top 5 tagged guys on FanShare right now are DeAndre Hopkins, Chris Hogan, Antonio Brown, Amari Cooper, all the way priced down at $5K, and Will Fuller. Like, what the hell is actually happening in NFL right now that like you couldn't have made a bet and set a line like high enough for me to be like, oh yeah, those are going to be the top 5 guys in week 6.
Listen, So I think this is a bad week to be all over the chalk. Just there's a lot of ways to go. I don't think you need the owner. I think you just need to avoid the ownership in GPPs, especially, when we talk about game script for what, the highest tagged quarterback and both of his top receivers are in the top 5 tagged. It just screams pivot to me, and pivot to Lamar Miller. Just that's just me. I don't like chalk, and I understand it if people want to play it, but he's been great this year, but I'm just not on that train of just smashing those guys into a lineup and thinking that it's going to go. So I am a bit interested in Amari Cooper. What are your thoughts on the Raiders? I'm going to grab another beer real quick.
I mean, as far as Amari Cooper goes, Crowell and Cooper were my brand. Between those two guys, between Crowell and Cooper, I really just screwed up royally this year, apparently. But I think there's a reasonable expectation that Cooper bounces back. I think at $5K, you're looking at a guy that's, talent level / pedigree, whatever you want to call it, is way too high for that price. Like, I don't know. I'm definitely not touching him in cash, but I will absolutely have some shares of him in GPPs because I think that people will be scared off. Like, analysts, people in the industry are talking about him, but I think at the end of the day, Cooper has become a bit of a punchline, and I think that people are avoiding him at almost all costs. So I don't think that tag number is going to correlate particularly well to his actual ownership on Sunday. I think what you mentioned before, if you can just say, you know what, I'm not going Hopkins, I'm not going Fuller, I'm just going to throw in Miller. I mean, he could, if he scores 2 touchdowns, he's in the Millionaire Maker winning lineup. No,
sure.
Like,
for sure,
there's no way around it. The ownership is going to get out of control on all the Texans. It seems like, except for Miller. So why not just take a shot there? And we'll talk about it in a minute, but I think the tight end in Houston makes a lot of sense too, and Ryan Griffin. But I mean, I think you can go a lot of different ways at wide receiver. I think you're going to get Julio at some depressed ownership. I think that Willie Snead makes a little bit of sense because he's just coming back and people may have forgotten about him. I don't know. Is there anybody else that's really jumping out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many receivers that we can talk about. I mean, so anybody in the Arizona-Tampa Bay game, I think you need to have exposure to. And I mean, really anybody, whatever your feeling is, whoever you like. The only guy that I would fade is Mike Evans. The last time that Mike Evans had a decent game here against Patrick Peterson, he had 18 targets and his efficiency was really poor, but he put up points just by volume. I just don't see that happening because Tampa Bay has more weapons. They have a decent run game. They've got two, elite tight ends, and they've got Djax. So plus Adam Humphries has been, really, sort of, almost, predictable out of the slot the last few games. And he doesn't have like the worst floor in the world either. So I think that anybody in the Arizona, any pass catcher in the Arizona Tampa Bay game is in play. I'm really high on Djax, just sort of taking the opposite of Patrick Peterson has worked pretty well so far this year. And Jameis is starting to target him more. He had his best performance against the Pats last week. Just all signs point up. They lost a tough matchup, blah, blah, blah. I think Tampa Bay comes in hungry and they're ready to air it out against a bad pass defense and they make it work. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I'm always fully on board with Djax any chance I get. I think he's in a spot where, again, maybe the fan share tags are more industry people than, public money that's actually gonna click on a lineup and put Djax into it. So I think he makes a ton of sense as well. And then I'm sure there's some people that I'm missing, but I also am thinking, like, what are your thoughts on Fitz? Like, I can't get there with him and trust him. Like, I want to because of the spot, but like, I just feel like I can't figure him out this year. So what are your thoughts on Fitzgerald?
So I lived in Arizona for a year. Well, actually, I lived there for like 3.5 years, and I'm a Cardinals fan and I'm a big Fitz fan. Like, I personally just love the dude. I never play him in DFS. He's one of those, like, I'm not playing him. He's not on my decision board, and he's never in there. That said, he might make his way into like a game stack for me this week. But my problem with Fitz is distribution of targets, just kind of once again. So they've got Andre Ellington. Peterson's not going to make an appreciable impact in snaps this week. He's had 2 practices. So Ellington's role isn't going to change for this week, I don't believe. So you've got Ellington coming out of the backfield and being split out. You've got John Brown. He's healthy again. They've got their full complement of receivers. And that's what scares me the most about Fitz is I just don't think he's going to have that volume that, he traditionally has. That said, if they're able to move the ball well, and let's say that John Brown catches 2 bombs, that get him inside of the 10, I think Fitz's red zone targets are through the roof, and this could easily be like a 6-catch, 80-yard 2-touchdown effort for him without too much trouble. But I just worry that there's just too many other people to feed in that offense right now for me to play him in cash. But in GPPs, I'm probably going to have some of Fitz. And when I say some, probably very little. But that's just a personal decision. I think all the reasons to play Fitz are still there. And we're still early in the season. I mean, he's like 800 years old. So, when we get to like week 9, I'm probably not even going to consider Fitz regardless of matchup. But right. I think right now he's still pretty fresh, and he makes a great play.
Yeah, for sure. I think that makes a little bit of sense too. It's just one of those things where it's probably personal bias where I just can't figure out what the hell to do with him most weeks. Also, I think that just looking through some other like potential plays, I mentioned Garcon before. I think he makes quite a bit of sense.
Love it.
I think he's seen like well over 8 targets a game with the exception of the Seattle game. So I think that makes a little bit of sense this week. Outside of that, I mean, I'm really trying to like limit my player pools lately. Trying not to get too cute and going all over the place. Obviously with Sanu out, some people will go towards Taylor Gabriel. I think maybe you hit him one week over the next couple of weeks while Sanu is out, but most weeks you're just throwing away your money on that guy. And then outside of that, I think maybe Keenan Allen makes a bit of sense because he's going to see
Oh, yeah.
some volume as well. But I mean, really, I can't get there with a lot of guys this week. I'm really trying to, sort of narrow my pool a little bit this week so I don't go. I just feel like sometimes you put together 20 lineups and you're like trying to get a piece of everybody. I mean, at least that's how I feel sometimes. I'm like, I'm trying to get a little bit of everyone, and none of my lineups are correlated with each other. And if I hit on a core, all these other plays are so all over the place that it doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's the thing. It's like it's the FOMO, man. It's the fear of missing out. You gotta have. I struggle with it too. I think every DFS player struggles with it, and the guys that are good, that don't computer generate their lineups, they understand that core principle, and I think it holds true in every DFS sport. I mean, we play lots of golf, and I think it's the same in golf. Especially in golf, I think really because the variance is just so high between individual players, and they're not game script dependent or anything like that. So there's so many receivers you can go to this week. I mean, I think Adam Thielen is in a phenomenal spot with Case Keenum almost certainly starting. He has shown a propensity to throw to him. I don't think Green Bay is going to be able to stop him. Diggs is banged up with his groin, and Keenum can sling it, man. And he's not afraid of trying to fit balls in windows. And I think Thielen could be set up for a big game. And if they end up chasing and, Rodgers does get ahead of the Minnesota defense, I think that Thielen makes an incredible tournament pivot away from Jerick McKinnon, who will be probably the highest owned player on the slate. So yep. I think there's a case to be made there. The other guy, I love Garcon that you were talking about. The other one that's interesting to me that I can't quite get there, maybe it's because he sucked until the very last minute and scored a touchdown last week, but Landry. All right, so here's the thing. So we've got the offensive line coach blowing lines at the team facility, and he's gone. Dream. Oh, yeah, I mean, strippers and blow. I mean, it's hard to argue. It's just maybe you shouldn't record yourself doing it and then send it to your, stripper girlfriend, whatever. But so they've had just all kinds of turmoil. Just year after year, it seems like there's just this incident. Well, I mean, what are the odds that they get up for a game, right? Maybe they distributed blow to the entire team and they're just fired up to go into it. I don't know, right? But they got to throw the ball to somebody. I mean, Cutler is not good. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Cutler's bad. I said he's bad last year and he's bad this year. But, I mean, his low 8-out targets, he's almost like a running back. He's got a decent floor. In a game they should be playing from behind and in all likelihood can get blown out in. He should be able to get a lot of looks. I don't know if I can pull the trigger in cash. But I think he makes an interesting GPP play, especially if you believe in Atlanta's passing game. Stack it up, or if you believe that Freeman is going to smash and that Dolphins are always going to be chasing, I think that he makes an interesting correlation play.
Yeah, I think you could definitely run him back. If that's the story that you want to tell yourself for that game, then absolutely that makes a ton of sense. And going back to what you were saying about Thielen, Diggs hasn't practiced yet this week, which makes a ton of difference. And honestly, I mean, Thielen's seeing close to 25% of the targets in Minnesota anyway. So even if Diggs ends up active, that might suppress Thielen's ownership a little bit, but I don't think that makes him a better or worse play. I think that he's still a good play no matter what.
I think it makes him a better GPP play if Diggs is active, just because it taps down his ownership just a hair. But yeah, I don't think it changes his projection at all.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't hurt his production if Diggs isn't gonna make an appearance on Sunday. All right, and other than that, I mean, I do want to throw out there, Ty Fraud Hill is dealing with a hamstring injury, so just don't play him. You shouldn't have been playing him anyway, so don't worry about it. But this is an excellent transition into how much of a smash play Travis Kelce could turn out to be.
Yes.
This week. If Hill is limited at all, Kelce he's fully practicing already. I mean, people were worried about the concussion. I'm pretty sure Kelce has limited brain cells in the first place, so I don't think that I don't think that's much of a difference for him.
Dude's big into fashion, though, man. He loves his fashion.
Yeah. And I mean, if he was on this, unfortunately for him, if he was on this podcast right now, he would have the third best beard. So there's that as well.
Nice.
So yeah, I think he makes a ton of sense this week. I don't know. What are your thoughts on sort of paying up this week at tight end? So we'll go like Gronk, Kelsey, and Reed.
I think that it is interesting because I don't think a lot of people are going to do it. Just generally speaking, I think you're going to buy yourself instant GPP leverage by rostering any of these top three. The love for Austin Seferian Jenkins is admirable, but not at 4,300. And I also think that I also think that the defense for New England gets right a little bit this week, and I think that they take him away. He's the best weapon that they have, and Belichick's just kind of known for that. Right. So I think he's the guy they take away. Plenty of people are going to be on him. Hunter Henry's on the rise, and Ryan Griffin is the $4,000 chalk that I think is easy to get away from. I think that he's in a great matchup, and we all know how bad Cleveland is against tight ends, but that's assuming that that's the route they take to attack Cleveland because, I mean, let's be honest, you can kind of do whatever you want against Cleveland, and Deshaun Watson's shown the ability to do whatever he wants. So they could just choose not to throw it to him, but he could also have a 2-touchdown game. So I like Griffin in cash. I'm not sure that I want the ownership and the potential bust in tournaments, but moving, when you go further down, I think guys are going to be going to, where do you go? There's another, Zach Miller, I think is going to eat up all the ownership down at the bottom in cash. I think personally, he's the best tight end play in cash, in my opinion. 100%. But so I think just any of these top three guys, they're all in great spots and they're all going to be low owned. And you could just kind of pick between them. Their projection, I think Gronk has the highest projection for sure. But my argument on Kelsey as being the best tight end play centers around not only Hill being a little banged up, but there's potential that Kareem Hunt regresses a little bit just in general. And I'm not sure if we see that this week or if it happens at all. But if it does, I think this is a week we could see him just, we saw last week that you can't predict a 50-plus yard touchdown every time he gets into a game. And so that said, this is kind of just an extension of that. I think this could be the spot where they just feed Kelsey. And I don't know that Pittsburgh can do anything to stop it, to be honest. Their pass rush is great, but I don't really know how well their secondary can stop Kelsey. I mean, he's Gronk-esque in that regard. So I really like Jordan Reed as the lowest owned play to stack with Cousins, though.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. Also, I don't think I can get there with Henry, even in GPP. I'm not completely sold on him. I think there's a few other plays that I like better. You mentioned Zach Miller. Last week with Trubisky, what do you have, 7 or 8 targets? Which was the most.
He'll have more, and he'll have more this week.
Exactly. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I love being able to punt in cash at tight end. So that's definitely the play for me. I went with like Kittle last week in cash. And I can't even. Oh, there's an Ertz touchdown as well.
Yeah, just saw that.
We got. I'm trying to remember who was like Croft. Tyler Croft was the gross like hungover decision that I made a couple weeks ago, and then I went Kittle with my hungover decision on Sunday morning this week for my cash lineup. So,
dude, text me that decision on Sunday morning. Those are working out for you. Let me know what that is.
I was like, I've literally never hit on tight end like ever. And I was like 2 weeks in a row.
It really is one of the tougher spots, I think. Tight end and defense, I think, really define cash lineups nowadays, and it's tough sometimes to find that. I mean, last week, Ingram was the nuts. Everyone, he was in the nut matchup, nuts, blah, 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 and posted a fucking 0.
Yeah, just gross. And, thank God, honestly, thank God that game isn't on the main slate because as a Giants fan, I don't want anybody – to have to deal with like the heartache and the disgust that I have to deal with on a weekly basis. They're so stupid. Like you
Dude,
lose
McAdoo is a wackadoo. McAdoo's a wackadoo.
He's the worst. You lose 4 wide receivers, and you're like, I don't know. Let's not throw to our like freak athletic tight end. Let's just start throwing to like Lewis and all these other guys. Like I don't know. I can't even begin to discuss like the curses that were flying out of my mouth and my dad's mouth on Sunday when we were watching the game is not repeatable on a family program like Bogey Free. But it was just bad, man. I don't understand what the hell they're doing. If you're playing the full slate, if you're playing any other kind of slate, if you're not playing the Broncos, I don't know what the hell you're doing, because that game is going to be ugly. They're going to lose by 30. I honestly believe that. I think they're just in a complete, just on the road at Denver, with Denver on a long week. Like, just, oh my God, I'm not even going to watch. There's no way I'm watching that game. There's absolutely no way I'm turning on that game. I don't care.
Are you going to DVR and watch it and fast forward though, or anything?
Nope.
No,
I can't. I'm not even going to watch like ESPN. I'm going to like turn off my phone. I'm not going to look at the updates. I'm just going to stay away from it because it's gross. It's going to be so ugly. Like, so, it's,
who are they going to throw to?
Exactly. It's going to be, I guess in theory, it's going to be Ingram, but after last week, who the hell knows? Like, I don't know. It's going to be Lewis. It's going to be some guys off the practice squad. There's like hardly a warm body in the wide receiver room right now. So I don't even know. People like the beat writers are talking about like Victor Cruz. I'm like, I'm leaving. I'm done. I need to go find another team because I can't. If we're going to sign Victor Cruz back again, I don't know what to do.
So, I mean, do you think that what do you think the chances that they even are competitive in this game? Like 15% chance?
No,
not even that.
Not even. I think it's going to be the biggest scoring margin of the week.
Really?
Honestly.
So the 11.5 point spread is like nothing. You think they covered easy?
No, but like by a lot. I think I would be shocked if they were within 20 points. I don't think they score 10 points this week. Like in Denver, after Denver is coming off a bye, like Von Miller's just partying on the sideline at the Chiefs game last week, just chilling. Like, oh, we got the Giants next week. It's fine. I don't need to watch film. I'm just gonna go chill. Like, what the hell?
So, I mean, just to play devil's advocate, though. So I've been going back and forth on this, though. What if the whole team shows up thinking that, like, it's the Giants and we're just gonna roll? And I don't know. I'm just like, it's just so hard for me to believe that an NFL team gets blown out that bad, even in this position. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm just scared of it. It's the only reason I'm even considering. I'm not playing anybody except C.J. Anderson in that game. But if I'm playing the late slate, but the Super 7 has me a little like, could they maybe cover? And I don't think they can, but I just want to have the discussion. But you've just like talked me off of it, just locking them in.
I can't. I honestly can't. Like, most of the time I can talk myself into shit. You know what I mean? Like, I can be like, maybe if like this breaks that way and this breaks this way, I can get there. It's gonna be ugly, man. I agree. I was just trying to
find the other side, but I think you're 100% right, and I do think it's going to be ugly.
It's going to be so bad. I'm so annoyed about the whole situation, to be totally honest. And then I just pulled up. Oh my God, fucking Keegan Bradley's winning the CIMB right now.
Really, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, it's great. I love Keegan. He's perfect.
My outright bet on Keegan likes that.
Oh damn it! All right. Speaking of things we need to DM each other, let's hop on that real quick, because I'm on like full #never Keegan. So yeah, that's not a play that I ever make.
That's why I bet him outright and I don't play him in DraftKings.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that's fair. But my boy Woodland's up there and he didn't even tee off yet, so he's only 2 strokes back, so we're good.
That's all right. He still has to putt, so I'm not worried about him winning.
Exactly. All right. So we got, as we keep going, we got real quick for defenses. I think Texans make a ton of sense. If you're going to pay down, is there a defense or two that you're looking at?
Paying down. Let me pull up the prices real quick. I had Fanshare up. I know the Ravens are popular, but I'm not sure that that's what I want. If I'm paying down, I think that the Buccaneers are really interesting against Carson Palmer, who, like we said, can't get out of his own way. They've gotten a little bit of their linebacking core back, and I mean, I know it's at home in Arizona, but we've seen what the Bucs defense can do when they're fully healthy, and they're missing their big run stopper, but in Gerald McCoy. But getting some of that linebacking core back, I think, helps. So I could see a situation where Palmer throws 2 or 3 picks and one gets taken back, something like that. So I do like the Bucs. I actually really like the Steelers against KC. I think people are going to kind of overlook that. The blitz rate and the pressure rate for the Steelers is pretty impressive. The offensive line's kind of banged up for KC, and I mean, I know Smith is mobile and he makes good decisions with the football, but if he's missing Hill and they just lost what's the other guy's name, Conley, so they're down to Albert Wilson, and I mean, I think that there's potential to for the Steelers to kind of roll on defense there. And the other one that I was looking at down in the bottom, this is really gross, but I actually think the Saints make a decent GPP defense this week. We know Stafford can throw picks. He just kind of hasn't done it this year because their defense has been pretty good. He hasn't needed to, and they've slowed the pace of their games down a lot, wanting to run the ball, and Stafford hasn't been slinging it like he used to since Jim Bob Cooter came in like middle of last year or something like that. So his pass rate's just down comparatively speaking. He's making better decisions with the ball. But if they get any kind of pressure on him, which they've been doing better comparatively speaking to previous years, I think that we could see a situation where, Stafford throws a couple of picks, something like that, especially if his leg's a little hampered. He doesn't have the same kind of mobility, a couple of sacks, strip sacks, something like that, strip fumble. So I like that as a GPP defense. And the other one I like down here, kind of not at the top, is the Chargers against Oakland. I don't even think it matters which quarterback plays for Oakland. I think the pass rush is finally kind of figuring it out for the Chargers with Bosa and what's the other guy's name on the other side? That doesn't matter. But they've looked pretty aggressive the last couple of weeks, and I think they're starting to figure it out. I think they could certainly get some pressure on. If it's EJ Manuel, he's a little bit more mobile, but he's inexperienced, and he can throw picks and he can take sacks. And Derek Carr is mediocre. He's got paid a lot of money. So, and not to mention he won't be 100%. There's a solid chance that he takes a big hard hit, dude. He could be out. Right. with that back. So I think that those are probably the defenses I'll be paying down for. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I typically just spread it out pretty wide. I try to cast a wide net with defenses because it's just so volatile. Like you hit on what? 2 sacks and a turnover with some of these cheap defenses and you're golden. So, yeah. You hit cash value and you don't have to worry about much. So, I'm fully on board with what you were sort of targeting there. I don't really have much to add on defenses, honestly. I will just, sort of rotate my exposure accordingly to try to get a little piece of everybody. So why don't we wrap up with a couple stacks that you're interested in? I guess I'll give you a sec to think about it. My totally off the wall is Hogan to Njoku. I think that they're reasonably comfortable with each other. I think they have a good rapport, and I think that it makes a little bit of sense. If you saw the throw last week, that touchdown that he scored, I think exactly what I mean, because that was that was high level stuff. It wasn't just this was lucky. This was a design thing. Outside of that, I think all of the obvious ones Watson to one of his pass catchers makes some sense. I guess Winston to Djax is going to be one of my favorites too. I don't know how much that's going to be owned. But I think that makes a lot of sense because I like both those guys. And then just like I mentioned in the beginning, I think rotating through with Brady and his pass catchers or Rodgers and his pass catchers in the same contest makes a lot of sense. Like if you're going to go into like a 3-entry max and you go Rodgers and Adams, Rodgers and Cobb, Rodgers and Nelson, like I think that makes sense. That's what I've been sort of focusing on recently.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's kind of where I've been going with those 3-entry maxes and just trying to pretty much have the same core elsewhere and just going with some rotating stacks that could pay dividends in that situation. So anybody else that you're thinking of stacking up? I know there's a couple I left for you.
Absolutely. I love stacks, man. Stacks are what make GPPs fun in terms of building lineups for me. So like I just sit around and think of cool stacks to make. It doesn't mean they're plus EV. It just means they're fun.
Oh no. They're rarely plus EV, but when they hit, it's like outrageous EV. That's the point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is the perfect week to get away from chalk stacks. So I mean, just there's so many directions and so much value this week that I think you really need to have some conviction about your plays for one, and just stick to it and hope your core hits, and hopefully you find some low ownership in your stacks. But I'm 100% with you on Hogan and Njoku. And full disclosure, I'll be playing Louis in cash, Ricardo Louis. On the Cleveland Browns as well. I think that you could even stack all three of them up and then run it back if you believe in the pass catchers, or double stack tight ends or something. But I think you could run it back with Fuller. I think you can stack up Tampa Bay and Arizona like in any direction you want with almost any of the players, and you're going to have a really great shot at hitting tournament value. I think Winston is the better side of that stack personally. I know they got Doug Martin back, but I think Winston to Djax and run it back with John Brown is my favorite of that. Cousins to Reed with and stack it up with Thompson, run it back with Garcon, and just I like full game stacks. If I believe something's going to turn into a shootout or have a lot of value, then I try and stack up the game in general. So I like Cousins to Reed, Cousins to Crowder coming back. I think Crowder's probably going to have some depressed ownership, makes for an interesting stack. And then like we talked about earlier, Cousins and Chris Thompson, I think makes a really contrarian quarterback running back stack that could really hit. Breeze and Snead, we talked about running it back with Marvin. Marvin Jones is another one of my favorite stacks. I think it's a bit sneaky. I don't think people are going to be on Snead yet. Brady Gronk, nobody is talking about him. Just I don't know. I've listened to a bunch of podcasts and read articles this week, and I haven't seen them mentioned once. I don't think. No. Just nobody's talking about him. And I actually like the other side of the Washington game, Hoyer and Garcon, and then running it back with Chris Thompson, I think makes a really interesting stack, and it's going to be much more contrarian. If you believe that the game shoots out and you believe that Josh Norman, the loss of him really affects the way that defense plays the game, I think Hoyer showed us last week that he can produce garbage time points, and he's going to be low owned. Not on the main slate, but if you're playing FanDuel, I think stacking up the Denver defense and CJ Anderson makes tons of sense for all the reasons we talked about and how bad the Giants are projected to be. And I don't believe in Derek Carr or EJ Manuel, but I do believe in Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen. And if I want exposure to Amari Cooper, I think the best way to get it is to run him back in that type of stack. So I like that. I like that game stack. And then the other one, I don't know if I'll play this, but I wrote it down because Sammy Watkins goes off like 3 times a year, right? Nobody. Yep. I mean, we saw that Antonio Brown kind of went off last week in terms of points just through volume. I don't necessarily think that occurs, but Sammy Watkins' foot's not bothering him, which is like the plus side for Sammy Watkins, and he kind of has been the squeaky wheel. He doesn't know what his role is, and blah blah blah. And Goff hasn't been the worst thing ever. So I do think that like if you're playing 100 lineups, you can throw this in one. Goff to Sammy Watkins, I think makes interesting, and it'll be less than 1% owned.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But Yeah, man, those are some of the stacks that I think are fun this week. Oh, the other one is Devonta Freeman and the Atlanta defense. I think makes an interesting stack as well. And you almost could stack Ryan in there as well because they do throw to Freeman a little bit, and we've seen him. I mean, if he scores 2 touchdowns and they both come on like a short little pass inside of the red zone, that would be a huge contrarian stack. You could even run that back with like Jarvis Landry.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So, like I said, this week is so much fun in terms of building lineups because you can go so many different directions. And I think there's a lot of games that you can project for shootouts, and a lot of fantasy points are going to be generated, just generally speaking. I do think this will be one of the higher scoring weeks that we've seen this season in terms of what wins GPPs. So avoid the ownership if at all possible. And, good luck, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And thanks again for coming on tonight, Jimmy. I appreciate it. You're again lapping the field. You're the only multiple appearance guest, let alone 3-time guest. So thanks for coming on as always. Other than that, make sure you're following Jimmy on Twitter at DFS Jimmy. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at Matt Jones TFR. Check out bogeyfreedfs.com. I just launched it last weekend. And other than that, if one of us isn't taking down one of these GPPs, maybe it'll be one of you guys. So good luck this weekend, and talk soon. See you.